Yo, good morning. Chase day, second chase of the year. Got a slight risk here in South Carolina, Georgia. 5% risk of a tornado. We'll see if it upgrades later on, but I don't think it will. But typically I start every day off with a good workout, and today is no different. Waking up early, getting ready for the day. Sun has not came up at my house. It's a nice, steady rainfall. Man, got to get your mind right in the mornings, you know? So about to head off and storm chase here in about a couple minutes. What some people don't realize is storm chasing is a huge routine killer, and that's something I take very serious in my life outside of weather, is my nutrition, health, all those good things. And you know, I really got on a health kick about a year ago. I took it very serious. So I actually packed my lunch, I pack everything, I got all my snacks, I got my lunch. And you know, I do that, it takes some extra time, gotta stop at a gas station, warm stuff up. But it helps me to stay on routine, because one thing people don't realize is, like I said, storm chasing, huge routine killer, especially if you don't do it full time like me. So that's very important to me. So I'm trying to scope out where I want to head. Complications with this kind of create some decisions for me, but as you can tell, it's around 8:15 Eastern time. Got some storms. I'm here in Columbia right now. I got some storms right into here, but there's no fuel in the atmosphere right in here because of all this morning rain that kind of moved through, really stabilized the atmosphere. But you go on down here, which we're out of the range of the radar. Let's try to look at Charleston real quick. I'm going to kind of do this on the fly. You go down here to Charleston, you know, it looks more so like a line of storms. Doesn't look super impressive, but the thing is there's energy, there's fuel in the atmosphere really building into the low country of South Carolina right now that could fuel some of these storms. It'd be messy. So, you know, you kind of look at the fuel in the atmosphere here. Look down here. 500 joules per kilogram mixed layer Cape beginning to build into the low country of South Carolina. Not a lot of surface Cape, which we wouldn't expect really right now. But you go on up here where those storms are forming that we just showed you, there's no fuel in the atmosphere. But what we expect to see is certainly some fuel that will build into the eastern sections of South Carolina. Will this try to fuel these storms right here that are forming currently? Let's see if we can go back here and kind of relook at this. Currently in the western Midlands of South Carolina. So it's kind of a tough decision for me to make. I lack patience, but you know, with storm chasing, you got to have a lot of patience. So do I chase this, wait around, wait for this sector to open up, Cape to build into here, fuel these storms that aren't showing up very well on short range models? Or do I shoot down here, then shoot back up 95? It's big questions, and you know, that's the day of a life of a storm chaser, trying to figure out these little small, very small, you know, choices that you got to make. And just like that, I was cruising on down 26, coming up to a crossroads in my future where I knew I had to make a choice. Am I going to hang out in my home state, wait for a while for storms to fire with the potential that they might not, or am I going to cruise down 95 to Georgia where I knew storms were there, but I knew I had a heck of a drive ahead of me? So one of the toughest things about storm chasing is the mental part of it. Of course, physically you get tired out there, worn down, especially on the way home when the excitement begins to settle down. You realize you have a several hour drive back home in front of you. But before the chase is figuring out that target area. And for me personally, I can't, you know, speak on behalf of all chasers, because some chasers just don't care how far they have to drive. I do. You know, is how far do you want to drive, and do you want to take the chance? In this particular storm chase, me being in South Carolina, there's two areas that I kind of attack, right? One being this convective line of storms rumbling through Georgia right now with some energy out in front of it, but it's a pretty long drive. I would have to drive down 95, get pretty deep into Georgia, get out ahead of that line, and see if anything happens, or stay in my own state where, you know, the ingredients will be there, but almost all short-range model guidance struggles with actually getting storms going. So that's the two struggles I face. Do I want to drive that far, get home later tonight, or do I want to stay in my state, take a risk of not really seeing anything, plus having to just kind of sit around for a pretty long time for the atmosphere to destabilize, because I left pretty early just so I can make this decision. And me being already kind of south of Orangeburg, definitely got some decisions to make, so we'll see what happens. So ultimately, I ended up choosing Georgia. And really the reason being is I just did not want to sit around South Carolina for hours on end into the afternoon, evening hours, just waiting on storms to fire. When I knew there was a solid potential, nothing ever would, and it never did, but we'll get to that later. So I targeted these storms you see on your screen, and as I got closer, I locked eyes with a nasty tornado-warned storm around Nahunta, Georgia, that was showing solid signs of tight rotation. And I knew as I got a little bit closer to it, it was coming towards me, I was coming towards it. This thing was really close, or either actually producing a tornado. And sure enough, on the correlation coefficient, we call it a CC drop. You see that area in green and blue. That started symbolizing that there was debris getting lofted into the air, which really confirmed, by radar at least, that there was a tornado on the ground. A little bit of a closer look of it here. And I knew that there was basically a tornado lurking within 5 miles away from me, somewhere in the woods. I never ended up seeing this tornado. I saw a lot of crazy cloud movement, but no actual tornado. And what I think happened was this tornado lifted just a couple short miles away from where I was located, where another storm chaser actually did get this tornado on film and the damage that it did. In his video, the tornado looked like a rotating wall of rain, which is how a lot of rain-wrapped tornadoes look like, especially in the South, which is what makes them so dangerous, because a lot of times you don't know what's coming right at you. Now, on this picture you see on your screen, this is probably the best picture I got of the entire storm chase. Might not look like a whole lot, but this is what you call a rotating wall cloud. And at the time I took this picture, it wasn't rotating very much or aggressively, but you could tell at one point, this is definitely where the tornado occurred in this storm. The National Weather Service ended up rating this tornado a high-end EF2, which produced 130 mile per hour winds and almost traveled 5 miles in distance. And as the rotation weakened, the meat of the storm caught up with me, and I had to drive through that dreaded heavy rain, which happens with just about every storm chase. Ultimately, I ended up choosing Georgia. Went down there all the way, I would say halfway down 95, between the South Carolina-Georgia border and the Florida-Georgia border. I got down there near Brunswick, Georgia, and 5 minutes away from seeing a tornado. Just came at it a little bit too late. It did end up dropping a tornado in Georgia, but just wasn't able to get on it. But saw some big time lower base. I posted it on social media. put it in this video also. A lot of rotation, but nothing too crazy. No confirmed tornado. So heading back up 95 north. Sun's already starting to kind of, the sky's beginning to brighten up a little bit. So I'm gonna head on back to my home state here in South Carolina. There's a little bit of a convection storm activity beginning to fire up. See what I can get as I kind of mosey my way back home. But storm chase not quite over yet, so we'll see what we'll get. So heading on back home in Orangeburg, South Carolina currently. Race back to South Carolina, made pretty good timing despite the always annoying I-95 traffic. But there ain't a whole lot firing up storm-wise. Feels like a nice late spring evening out there. I'm tired, I'm hungry. It was a pretty good chase, you know, always great chases with what I get, how much money I spend, and how far away I have to drive. Those are the three things I grade a storm chasing event with. You know, I would say it was a solid B. Very close to getting a tornado in Georgia, like I mentioned. Very close, scary close. Honestly, it's always scary chasing in the deep south because you got the trees. It's not like you're chasing the plains where you got wide openings. You're very lucky to get some wide openings in the deep south. You do sometimes, but it's obviously not as common. But heading on home, ready to be home. I'll be home in about 45 minutes, unless something sneaky pops up here. Little convection around, but it doesn't look like it's going to do much. But yeah. Well, we home. Back to my cats here. Got Rocket over there. This is Stormy, and that's Kylo just chilling. So it's good to be home.